Fire Mountain.
Oh, yeah.
Episode 32. Welcome to Fire Mountain Summer Edition.
Come on.
Episode 32. Great to have you. We got some guests with us today on this summer one. I don't know how I've ended up in the sun.
Yes.
So by the end of this one, I'm just a ball of sweat. Welcome to Fire Mountain.
I thought Bilbo liked the summer.
You know what? So we got Free Bird with a Bilbo like a summer.
Hey.
Like a summer. We got Johanna Biela.
No, I can't
Come on.
believe that it's taken until episode 32 to get us on, right, Joe?
That's true.
I'm really actually offended.
Onwards
some
and
upwards?
upwards. Onwards and upwards the whole way.
Onwards and upwards, you say. Onwards
Yeah.
and upwards, you say. Well, welcome to Fire Mountain, episode 32. We got a great episode for you today. We know you're going to enjoy this one and maybe not be offended by it.
That'll be a first.
That would be. By 32, we should get there.
So before we do, a couple of things in the news. I was reading a Telegraph article
Right.
where they put a vote out into the nation
Okay.
where they voted on the ugliest shirt in Premier League of all the new tops released, and
Okay.
Bournemouth shirt came up as number one.
I rebuke that.
Number
Nonsense.
one.
Utter nonsense.
If you haven't seen it, it's basically the red shirt, black stripes, but now they've decided to make the black stripes
Zigzag.
Zs, like zigzag. It looks ridiculous.
But did you
It does
see
look
who
ridiculous.
the chair of that board was? It was Stevie Wonder, wasn't it?
Off the bat?
I'm
off
just
the
saying.
bat,
I'm
off
just
the
saying.
Bat, here we
I'm
are.
just saying.
Free said
That's
to
quite
me,
a 1980s
It is.
thing, isn't it?
And
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
fashion at the moment.
Retro,
It's that
yeah.
Stranger Things kind of vintage vibe. Tell me, Richard, because I know you're so au fait with football,
okay,
what kit is your favourite kit?
out of all of the new ones,
Yeah.
the third kit, the black one.
No, I mean, of any team in the Premier League.
Oh no, I don't know. I don't care. Literally,
So all you want to
could
do
not give one
is
about
you
this
just want to rub
conversation.
salt in the wound of any Bournemouth fan watching this broadcast today, because you
Yeah.
know there's plenty in Sunny Hill.
Yeah.
You just want to upset them
Yeah.
and not have any real preference
Yeah.
or skin in the game.
And what's even better is I've seen a few of you wear the shirts.
Yeah. That's awesome. Out of interest,
Yeah.
Joe, who do you support?
Arsenal.
Peru?
I
Don't care.
No, I don't think I've ever watched a full football match.
So
Even England?
Even England.
Wow.
Yes.
I'm on a level with you all. I took my kids to go watch a football match. It is the most boring experience I've ever had in my life.
To be fair, I know the games you're talking about, they're the pre-season games for Bournemouth, and they were not interesting. But the thing that made me laugh, right, is me and Louise took our three, and Charmaine, you basically tag teamed in,
We
didn't you?
tag
'Cause
teamed,
you-
two-
is that because
two
you're
in a
too
row.
tight to buy 2 adult tickets?
Yeah, literally, we were not going to buy 2 tickets for adults, so we went 1 and 1.
So Charmaine took them to one game, Richard took them to the next game. But the thing that was so funny is, you know, when you like see, you know, that general stereotype of Chinese people having cameras and snapping everything like that. Charmaine had literally gone into the superstore, the Bournemouth AFCB superstore on site, and bought every cliche supporters, the clappers,
got
the foam
clappers,
fingers.
foam
I've
fingers.
I've
I'm
never
not
seen a
joking.
foam finger in the
Brilliant.
stadium, but Richard's kids are there,
Yeah.
like we're watching Gladiators.
Foam fingers, clappers, and you know what they didn't buy? The ugly new T-shirt.
I was like, man, yeah, I could tell that you guys are not kind of seasoned football watchers.
Honestly, and the most exciting part of our game is some of the supporters of the other team. One of them threw some water, and the whole block of supporters got kicked out the stadium.
Oh,
And that was in about the first 3 minutes of the game. So that was me done. After that,
That was the
going,
Spanish side, wasn't it? Real
Yeah,
Sociedad.
yeah, yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my
the thing
gosh.
is, I would have been in Charmaine's camp actually.
Come on.
The uninitiated
Yeah.
football goer who's supposed, you know, you're supposed to care passionately about football, right? There's this expectation in England that I would have a football team, which I don't, and that I would, if I went, look like a fan. And so I think I would do exactly what I'd go, what's the formula?
Yeah.
Give me the formula.
Yeah.
Tell me, what am I supposed to do? I'll do
I mean,
it
it's so
all
fun-
and get through this nightmare of enthusiasm.
even better. I went to go get my kids the mini meals because I was all like
The
£3
mini meals.
for a mini meal. That's happening. And there were 2 dads in front of me, and like big dads, like beards, like basically we all
Like
look
you.
like brothers. And literally the 2 of them were standing there, and as they were talking to each other, I nearly weighed in because they basically looked at each other and went, "This is the stupidest game. I'm only here because my boys wanted to come and watch it. I would much rather be watching rugby." And I was all like, "My people, my tribe, I see you."
As in, when you say my people, you mean co-hobbits.
Yeah. Co-
Bilbo, Sam, and Frodo all together, queuing up for a little meal deal.
Is
Basically,
there-
men
is
who
there a
can grow
hobbit
beard.
sport, though? I want to know. What
Ah.
sport do hobbits?
Rugby,
know?
because in South Africa you can play rugby without your shoes on.
Ah, that's
So,
good.
Hobbit feet.
That's because they get stolen, is it? The shoes?
Well,
Is
we
that
don't want to say they do, but yeah, they do.
Well, yeah. Go on. What were your thoughts, Joe, on Richard and Charmaine's buying into this kind of crazy Bournemouth fan fever?
You know you're for it. Just say it, Joe.
I feel like, I think that if you're going to go, you have to be all in.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what's the point? Go home.
Yeah, I agree with all in. The thing that just made me laugh the most is just I've never seen those items ever.
No football.
I didn't know they sold them, but when I saw through the
Do
bag,
they not have those items?
no one uses them in the stadium. So
do
the
they
first time
not?
I've seen red foam fingers
Yeah.
on the front row.
I would.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's like
for that.
And we were on the front row, so we're not even like we were in the we were on the front row.
I was pleased that you put some money into the club. I'm happy about it, but I was just like, wow, that's
Dude,
awesome.
cost of living.
So Charmaine with the clappers, she was doing this. It was so funny. I was like, this is brilliant.
Cost of living. Someone's got to keep the male footballers in pay. Obviously, not the female ones.
I've got an
Wow.
idea,
Lionesses.
actually.
Okay.
I think we should have like fan behaviour and merchandise
Yeah.
at Sunny Hill.
Okay.
Like, let's have a front row.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Clappers.
Clapper,
Yeah.
swinging,
Fine,
finger
fingers.
pointing.
Sometimes we have
Yeah.
clappers on the front row. It's not appropriate.
Yeah,
is it?
like
That's wrong.
woo, woo. I mean, to be honest, I like the idea. I mean, it definitely feels more American, that doesn't it, to have these foam fingers and clappers and stuff instead. But I think, as South Africans, what you guys have mastered is really annoying stadium additions, like the Vuvuzela.
Oh, dude,
right?
I wish we had a Vuvuzela.
Yeah.
I wish it.
Oh, mate.
Also, let's get the
wow.
pronunciation right, because you're saying Vuvuzela.
What is it?
It's very British of you, but it's Vuvuzela. Zela.
Vuvuzela.
Vuvuzela.
I don't know. I mean, what was it? South Africa? What 2010?
Yeah.
It just ruined the whole competition because I couldn't really hear the commentary because all you could hear in the background was
Yeah.
No, but that's the whole point. The commentary sometimes.
Yeah.
needs a
Sucks.
lifting. Needs.
You know why you have a Vuvuzela? Because football is so boring to watch. You need something to just make the game a little bit more like inside and keep you awake.
So what I'm hearing you say, Joe, is that when Richard preaches, you think people in the church should be given Vuvuzelas
Vuvuzelas.
on the.
Yeah, give them one of those. Vuvuzela.
I mean, on a serious note, with where the economy is going and inflation, right?
Man.
Looking in the news and the predicted hikes that are coming, because they clearly just like put a bit of kind of, I don't know, they gave us a bit of an awareness what was coming, but it seems that that's way off track in terms of it's going to be so much more. Obviously, it's like, what are your thoughts in terms of, I don't know, just the state of society economically? Like, how are you guys finding these hikes and these significant increases to utility bills? I know I just took a very serious turn away from football.
Luckily, we still got the music going, so it keeps it light. It keeps it light.
It keeps it light.
It's poverty, but it's light.
Yeah. We're all poor, but it's light. How are you doing, Joe?
Yeah, I'm good. Can you come back to me?
Yeah,
I can
sure.
think about it, actually.
Drew, what are your thoughts?
Well, you know, your weekly shop.
Yeah.
It's hiking, isn't
Yeah.
it? I've got a certain amount that I like to spend on my weekly shop, and that's having to creep up.
Are
So
you
just-
finding that you know it's more expensive, but not massively? Like, you can't go exactly where it's more expensive, but it's just more expensive.
Yeah, just overall, because I think I always had a particular amount. I do a supermarket delivery, and so I would always spend up to a particular amount. And what I've realised is it comes in, the lovely guy comes in and delivers
3
groceries,
items.
and you go, that's it? We're supposed to eat that for a week? So yeah, it's.
Oh, we got a visitor.
So yeah,
12 o'clock.
I've had to kind of hoik the budget a bit.
Yeah. Hello, Eliza.
And I guess I do really feel for the families who actually, that's a real hardship. It's really difficult to meet that
Yeah.
extra bit on top. So it's
Yeah.
hello.
A new addition to Fire Mountain. Get a 5th mic. She might speak more wisdom than us, Richard.
It is true, and it
It's
is
not
Fire
hard.
Mountain Summer Edition, so this is anything can happen
Yeah.
right now.
Right now, we're in a beautiful garden
Yeah.
over in Ferndown.
But yeah,
It's
I
wonderful.
agree. I feel like the shop is it's definitely getting more expensive, and you definitely feel like you're getting less for your money. Yeah, Joe?
I agree.
Thanks, Joe.
Good to have you.
I'm just so
Good to have you. She agrees. So that's a first for Fire Mountain.
No, I-
2 people in agreement in one
Weird.
episode.
It's weird.
No, I agree. I think at the end of the day, you know, you're spending more. Well, you're probably spending the same, but you're getting less for what you're
Yeah.
spending. You probably just just about budgeting, really, isn't it? I think you just kind of have to change your ways a little bit.
And I think it is quite tempting to buy the less expensive things and to bulk up on kind of processed foods and all of that, which is just, it's not good for us. So it's a tricky thing. It's tricky to balance. Kind of you want to feed your body healthily and keep it going well, and then also you want to stick to your budget. So
You know when I really felt it? I got an email from McDonald's to tell me that the cheeseburger was going to go up on the Saver
Yeah.
menu.
you're on McDonald's email list.
Yeah, 100% I'm on McDonald's.
I am
I'm
too.
100% on McDonald's email list.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't want to miss any news coming from Ronald.
Some
It's a
deals.
magical email. I wait for that email once a month. It's the excitement of my month. And when that went up, I was all like, at that point, I was all like, this
This
food
is it.
crisis needs to get sorted out. I'll vote somebody.
Get Truss in.
Because-
She'll sort it out.
Come on. No.
Will she though?
No.
Can she?
No.
Can anyone?
It's a good
Sunak.
question. I mean,
Sunak.
I saw something, right, and this will sound conspiratorial, right? But I'm going to say it, right?
Here we
you.
go.
Very
Here we
unlike
go.
you.
Right, World Economic Forum, right? They have stated, I mean, and you can find this for yourself. You can check it out on the website. I mean, we don't have a computer here. But one of their objectives is to try and move people towards a non-owning society so that people don't own things. Instead, they subscribe to services. So you'll see this subtly in loads of different manufacturers. So it's a big thing with cars now.
Yeah.
Car makers, rather than trying to sell whole units, what they're trying to do is set up subscriptions like iTunes and Netflix, where people pay something like £600 a month and get a car provided for that month. And the lure is this idea of, well, you're not responsible for the servicing, you're not responsible for the MOT or the fixing, but obviously the catch is that you will never own a car. And to get the next generation so conditioned to not actually owning the car outright, because they think, or this is what they say, I don't know whether it's what they actually think, but this is what they say, is people will be happier if they own nothing. Right? That's the line.
Wow.
Is that you will be happier if you own nothing. And I was thinking about that because immediately I reject it, because I feel like that's big government. I feel like that's people have less power when they own less things. When you don't own land, when you don't own a house, you're at the mercy of rates, you're at the mercy of landlords, you're at the mercy of someone else's outlook of their agenda. But at the same time, I was thinking it's kind of weirdly gospel-y as well. This idea that Jesus, I think, would propagate this idea of owning less is actually better for you. And I was in this torn moment when I was thinking about it the other day, because on the one hand, I want to fight this idea of only borrowing things, right? Because actually ownership speaks to freedom, ownership speaks to liberty and my rights as a civilian. But actually at the same time, Jesus, we know, came to the world with nothing, didn't even have a bed to lay his head on, and really didn't have a place to call home. And I was just thinking, well, it's a weird dichotomy.
Yeah, I don't know that ownership is freedom. To be
Okay.
honest, I think I would quite disagree with that. I think ownership is a responsibility. It's you've got stuff you need to maintain. You've got a level of the way that you live that you've got to work at. You've got stuff to dust and stuff to pay for. And replace and and if it breaks, it's like, well, that cost me such and such. I call it the tyranny of things.
Okay.
Like having too much stuff, having more stuff than you actually basically need. You do this, don't you?
Yeah,
The whole
it's true.
minimalist thing. It's stress and it's stuff.
I guess
that
the
don't
counter argument to that is, in the small things maybe, but obviously right now we're in your garden, Fru, which is a beautiful house, beautiful garden. Thank you for hosting Fire Mountain in your garden today, right?
You could have had another tree, though. I would have really valued that one just right here, that I'm not sitting in the sun. So my dog.
I definitely picked the right best chair, didn't I? Come on, Joe, well done.
A little like, what's
But our
happening?
children won't own homes
Well,
until they're how old?
Well, this is a problem. I think this is a problem for society. So I think, obviously we don't need to ask specifics, but you pay a mortgage on this, a smaller mortgage now, because obviously you sold up in London. We're able to buy something a bit bigger here and take out a smaller mortgage or whatever. But if you were to rent this, it would be on your ability to afford, which means all of a sudden a big part of your freedom and liberty is taken away. Because now you don't have the ability to pay off something and own it at the end. So you even see this with car loans, where it used to be, when me and Louise bought our first new car, you paid it off over 5 years, then it was yours at the end. Now they've introduced something called the balloon payment, which is like you pay it off for 5 years and then you have to give them like 13 grand or you have to give it back. So what it locks you into is this, I can never really own a car, because as soon as I get to that point, I don't have that capital,
So
which
do
means
you
I have to take
know-
out another payment scheme.
Do you know that
so lack of freedom.
BMW has started a thing now where they don't give you heated seats. It's all in your car. and then you can pay a subscription of $9.99 a month to unlock heated seats in your car.
Wow.
Gosh.
So you could do that over the winter time and then stop it over the summer and then unlock it over the winter.
That's crazy.
But you never have heated seats in your car. You have to pay
Especially if
for
the
that.
hardware's there.
It's crazy.
Exactly.
I
It's
think
already
it's
in.
crazy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd find a Russian hacker. I would hack that system, and I'd feel like morally virtuous in the process.
Using a Russian hacker.
Yeah,
With
yeah.
everything going on right now,
Yeah.
you've gone
Putin's nephew. I'm all over
Russian
it.
hacker. That's where I'm going.
Well, I have a weird. Oh no, should I say this?
Oh wow!
If you are
This is new.
self-censoring, how
This is
bad is
new.
it?
Well, I think I
How
may
bad
have said
is
it before. My view on the law is probably more nuanced than a lot of Christians, right?
We say nuanced.
Look-
It doesn't feel nuanced at all. It feels quite
Well,
deliberate.
yeah, I have a
Just
more
not
loose
good.
approach to the law. So for me, I feel like there's different types of law of the land. There's one that benefits the safety of other people, and there's one that benefits the person, like the civilian themselves.
Do you feel like that view comes from your mom?
Well, maybe. And my mum is sitting just off camera, just in the corner of the garden over here. I think no, my mum and dad are very law-abiding people. I don't know what happened with me, because what Adam is as well, isn't he? He's very
he's a
law.
responsible
He's very. I almost feel.
So by
like,
default, just for clarity of the conversation, what you're saying is your parents are law-abiding, your brother's law-abiding, you aren't law-abiding.
yeah.
You're
You're
different.
the last one, I think.
Well, Mum, when was I adopted?
She's not denying it.
yeah, the verdict's out. I don't know. I mean, I know that some people will struggle with this, but I feel like I almost have to go, yeah, that law makes sense for me to go, that's a reasonable law that I'm willing to comply with. But some laws I think are so ridiculous
Right.
and so silly. Like, for example, technically, you can't, say you've bought a DVD. Let's say you bought Dirty Dancing on DVD and you wanted to let Fru borrow it to watch it tonight. That's
Thank you.
illegal.
Because she
Why?
wants to have the time of her life.
Look, no one puts Fru in the
Oh,
corner.
I'm really looking for something.
No one puts Fru in the corner.
For that movie.
So that's illegal.
Really?
Yeah,
Not
because
a physical DVD.
yeah, it is
it?
physical. Unless she's there watching it with you,
Okay.
Who's
so
gonna
she would
check
have
on
to
that?
come because she's got the rights, not you. Like, she could just undercut every streaming service by saying, "I've got DVD, come and have them for free."
Or
So,
you could
so
all just share
she
one
has to watch it
Netflix
with you.
password,
Yeah,
like the whole world
Netflix
does.
password.
Yeah.
Doesn't everyone do that?
No.
Interesting.
No, not allowed to do that.
Come on,
I
Fru.
love the way you just said, yeah, but who's going to check?
Which is what makes the law hold up, isn't it?
I could drop into conversation at this point that at my driver awareness course.
Ooh,
Whoa!
yeah,
don't
they-
boast. You got a driver
Confession.
awareness course. I didn't.
Confession.
34 miles an hour. Anyway, on my way back from
In a 10-mile-an-hour zone.
Anyway,
If you're in
'cause
Sandbanks,
get
you deserve
points.
it.
You only get to go
Yeah.
on the driver awareness scheme if you're only
Yeah,
a little
that's
bit,
true,
little
that's
bit
true.
Do
above.
you not have to pay a fine as well?
No,
Yeah.
No,
No,
fine.
you pay fine.
But
You
it's
pay a
very
fine and you
no,
go on the
expensive
no,
course.
no points are lost,
Yeah.
and you
No
can't do
fine.
it for 3 years. I'm very familiar
Yeah.
with this part of the
Yeah,
DVLA.
you know this very well.
Very worried.
The point I was making was they made this point, like if you don't obey the rules of the road, 3 things can happen. You can get injured, or someone else get injured. There can be a fatality, or nothing. And it's funny because no, it wasn't that. Yes, it was that. Because when they got to nothing, there was this sense of, gosh, that's even worse. Because actually, you'll keep on doing the same thing that you got away with. You kind of, each time you do it, something in your brain, it confirms, I did the wrong thing, but it was all right, there was no consequence. And I think if you continue to do that, then your brain does become conditioned.
Yeah.
You become just as much slave to the rule breaking as you would have been to the rule.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I think that's a
Explains
kind
so
of
much of your life, Dom.
yeah. Well, I think so. I think that, for example, most Christians at face value will go, "Oh, it's horrendous that you would knowingly break a law." But I think people do it more than they realise, because some of these laws aren't moral laws. Some of these laws actually are laws that benefit big organisation and big pharma and big government. And I guess I feel like I'm not trying to argue a Christian case here. I'm arguing a case of a civilian. I kind of feel like, no, I am a autonomous being, right, that sits within a country. What I want to do isn't causing harm to anybody, including myself. Like, for example, the TV licence. I find that the biggest load of crock ever. I hate the TV licence because technically you can't watch anything live. unless you pay the BBC X amount of money every year. So even if your values are at odds with the BBC values and you don't like what they're putting into the world, you're obliged to give them money to watch another channel that they have no claim to. I think that's morally wrong. Anyway, that's my axe to grind. But I guess I kind of feel like with this sort of stuff, when I reason it out, if a law makes reasonable sense to me, I'm far more willing to comply. But that said, I appreciate that law is law, and there is a sense of like following the laws of the land. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's.
With your faith.
And I was going to say, can I add to that? That do you have like integrity? Where does that come into it?
Do you have integrity? That's just
Yeah,
the flat
because-
question Joe's asking. Is there any integrity?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's almost indefensible what I'm saying. So it'd be silly for me to try and make a knowable case out of it. I just guess, I think if we're all honest though, it's almost like that woman caught in adultery in John 8 where Jesus says, he without sin cast the first stone. That let's not talk about someone being wholly integral. There's measures of integrity, and I would say on the whole, I'm better than loads of other people.
But
If we're measuring it like that.
But he did say, go and sin no more.
Yeah.
I love it. It's the oldest people as well that go first.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
the ones that go, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I am interested though, because you said, I'm not trying to be, what was it? Which word did you use?
I'm not trying to make a Christian case. I'm just being a civilian in a
but
society.
But you said, I'm not trying to be principled or
Okay.
something. But you did make a principle just then when you said, I'm against big government.
Yeah.
What's the issue with what's the issue with having a powerful government, a government that actually can make decisions for the good of the country? Surely that's going to be their end aim.
Well. If you take government at its biggest is North Korea. That's government at its biggest, where civilians. So the bigger the government, the smaller the civilian.
But we choose the government here.
Well, yes, at the moment, but if the government becomes too big, then even that. So you've seen that in Russia. You've seen that Vladimir Putin has been able to move aside any threat to his run as president of Russia because he's changed legislation and bills and voting procedures because the government was given too much power to determine its own future. That's big government. And what that moves from is democracy.
So like Donald Trump is basically what you're saying.
Well, no, I'm saying thank God that Hillary Clinton never made the White House. That's all I'm saying. You don't have a boo. Don't even say it. You haven't got a boo. But so I would say big government if the interests of the civilian is the priority, but if I don't trust their motivation, then what it is about, it's about money, it's about power, it's about control. It's always the same demons clothed in different people, really. And I think as a civilian and as a Christian, we spoke about this a little bit, like we should be resisting that. Because the bigger the government, the smaller the civilian. Because we're not genuinely thinking, oh no, it's people's well-being at heart. Because you look at some of the legislation they put through. It's all about the preservation of power. It's all about the preservation of the bottom line. Because whilst we're a democratic state, we're also a capitalistic state, which means we're consumeristic. We're motivated by the dollar. And I don't know, I just think because Jesus can't be prime minister, right? In the absence of that, we must really hold our government to scrutiny and to hold them to account. But the bigger the government bigger the government gets, the harder it is to do.
Doesn't it concern you that if the end point of what you're saying with smaller and smaller government is the most marginalized, the most oppressed, the most vulnerable in society end up getting penalized, hurt, or have no help or support? Because we're really reliant on the government structures to be able to allow that to happen and facilitate it.
Yeah.
But to be honest, the end point of what you're saying is we would live in little tiny villages that potentially are maybe just our own families
Local
even,
lords.
Yeah.
where you have your own rule. But what it does mean is all of the poor people around you would not be able to help. And not everybody can get themselves out of the hole they're in.
Yeah, it's a really, really valid point. I don't want to cut across if anyone's got any thoughts on that. I don't want this to be the Dom and Richard Five Mountain show like usual, because we have got two guests today.
We have.
My thought to that is...
And I have got a big question that we're going to throw out.
Yeah. Oh, you got to stay tuned, man, because I might just run and hide at that point. So I'll get all of my crazy out here, right? I think you start from a premise there, which is wrong, which is that government is the saviour, that government becomes God to the citizen who needs help, right? So if you look historically, education, universities, hospitals, orphanages, the homeless and the poor, it was the churches that rose up and built orphanages. It was the churches that built hospitals. It was the churches that created the first universities, because they valued educating people, moving people from a place of sickness to health, moving people from a place of ignorance to knowledge, right? And the government comes in and slowly takes those things that the churches and initiatives that the churches have done, right, in the absence of government doing anything, because the government recognise education is power, health is power, these things are power, push the church aside, the church becomes apathetic and sleepy, and because actually the government deals with all the big problems of society, the church is kind of surplus to requirements. Just imagine if the government did pull welfare, the churches would need to rise up again. So I think in terms of gospel outcomes, I don't think it's wholly bad to say, but I think for a non-Christian citizen,
having done zero research on this whatsoever, so I'll draw from
that's
those
unlike
stats.
you on Fire Mountain.
It's not. I don't come with a pool of wealth, like a pool of wealth, a pool of knowledge, a wealth of knowledge. I come
pool of
knowing.
wealth.
I come knowing lots. Is I don't ever think churches could do it at a scale the government can do it. So I think we cite churches in that way, and there are pockets where that it's true, but that could still be occurring today. But across a national move, level playing field across the country, I think even if we looked at those examples you're talking about, I'm not too sure that they would be covering that. I think there would have been more abject poverty happening in those times, because they can't do it at the scale a government could do it. But I have no knowledge or research on this.
Yeah, that's good.
I think as well what you're talking about there is Christians who were acting at an influential level. So there were a body of Christians who were setting these things in place: education, healthcare, looking after the poorest of the poor. And what you're saying is, now that non-Christians have come in and taken on those responsibilities, Christians should just run away. Isn't that what you're saying? So you're saying, no, we shouldn't be relying on governments. Whereas, should we not be saying Christians need to be more involved? We need to be writing to our MPs on topics that we care about.
Yes.
I listened to a BBC, read a BBC article last night that was talking about, there are people that are anti-abortion because they believe that it's a social justice issue and not just for religious reasons.
Yeah.
And I felt absolutely incensed. I was like, well, Christians believe it's a social justice issue.
Yeah.
Because we're Christians, because we have a faith in the one good God, does not mean that we're absent from social justice.
Yeah.
And surely, rather than saying, oh, I'm not going to trust the government, I'm not going to drive according to the speed limit, instead...
Dom wouldn't have seen that article in BBC, because he'd have to have paid his license to do that.
No, because I would still use BBC without paying that.
Instead, should we not be encouraging more Christians, in fact every Christian, to be involved in speaking into the issues that our country faces, and particularly to Christians who are working as MPs and...
It's a good thought. I can hear you agreeing with that, Joe.
No, I do.
Do you have any thoughts to add or anything you want to say? I'm not trying to put you under the bus here. I just realised that we are like dogs with a bone. We go after it.
Fine. You guys just have more
conviction.
theory.
More. You guys have more ignorance than me and willing to spout it.
We're way ruder. We'll just talk over anyone.
No, I just... guess I'm more polite there. No, I agree with Fru. I think at the end of the day, you, as a Christian, if there are Christians in... There are Christians in politics, there are Christians all that we need to speak up, and I think maybe Christians aren't speaking up enough. Yeah. And is that because we fear the fear of not having a job, the fear of what? So I think Fru is right. I think at the end of the day, we do need to stand. Yeah. If this is what we believe, this is what we believe. Yeah. We have to stand up for it.
Definitely.
And it doesn't need to be a full-time role.
No. Yeah, but I guess my thing is, Fru, is I don't think it's a case of the mandate is to run away because now the government's taking care. But I think because the government appears to be taking care, the church doesn't see the need as prevalent. So it's almost like the horse or wagon first. It's like, does the church need to rise? It's like, does the church need to rise in the season? Of course, the answer to that is always yes. To the needs, to the challenges of society, absolutely.
As so many did during COVID.
So many did during COVID. But the problem with that, I think, is that all it does is it propagates a system that may not be necessarily healthy. And also, I think what you were saying, Richard, about the scale
Yeah.
I totally understand that.
My correct assumption is understood.
Like you were through, we were alluding to the idea, these things happen through whole power visions by those, and that from it was roots church work, start initiative. So like the Wesley homes, it didn't come Westminster, came local church. And I think I prefer the other. I don't think the goal of society is to create war anyway, because even Jesus the point with you always, just the reality of a city. Of course, we are to champion the cause of the idea, the whole of the orphan, the widow, all these things. But ultimately, I guess I fear their faith becomes increasingly dependent on the government, everything. Right? It's so funny, because like the return at the moment making a half effort, $1.5 billion, right? So clearly there's a margin there that if they were held to account by government, the savings should be passed on to the public, right? Bringing down the bills, but it isn't. So why is that? Because power and money speaks, and ultimately in this scenario, I think this is where big government actually doesn't serve us whatsoever, because it's not holding those. So what it does is the government says we'll give every household 400 quid, and everyone feels like, oh great, oh that's brilliant. Feel like the government have helped me. They're my saviour. They've given us £400 to offset a bill of £4,500, where last year we were paying 1,800 quid. So it's like, I feel like they capitalise on the ignorance of people just to take out handouts and to go, oh brilliant. And I kind of feel like as we get a bit more I guess connected to the challenges of this and politics and society, I think we would be more disgruntled with more power going through Westminster, personally. But that's just my view. What's your view at home?
We're going to come back to Fire Mountain right after this.
Mom, I'm so funny. Mom, I reckon I can make you do something you want to do. Oh,
Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. If you were wondering why did we quickly go to another bumper, we were having some real issues with the computer, but we're back. So even though the last 5 minutes or so were out of sync, hopefully you heard everything everyone said.
I mean, it was so important what was coming out of my mouth.
It was.
It was transformative.
It was very
I mean, we literally had Joe
important.
repenting off camera, just right here on her knees, pouring her heart. Yeah.
She was proper crying.
I'm sorry, Lord.
She was crying. Okay, so it's summer camp right now.
Yes.
We're going to be on summer camp.
Yeah. And we're hopefully going to have a special camp edition next Sunday, aren't we?
Yes, special camp edition on
That's the
Fire
plan.
Mountain. It's going to be
That's the
great.
plan.
Oh, what is going on again? Oh no, that's working.
Richard just had a
I
meltdown.
literally was going, what is happening? But it was all actually working just fine.
It's working just fine. Oh, by the way, here's the problem, right? Big government, small citizen, right? And we're going to move off topic, I know, in a minute. But that's because as people, it's easy. We're easy to manipulate. We're easy to coerce. Yeah. And just to prove that as an example, right, I got a little thing. Joe, do you reckon I can get you to do something you don't want to do?
No.
So I reckon I can force you to say the number 18.
Why? Okay, go on then.
Do you think I can do that?
I don't know. Should we try?
Okay, fine. All right. What's 79 plus 1?
Oh my days.
Fast maths.
What's 79 plus 1?
I'm thick. 78.
No, 79 plus 1.
18.
You said it. You said it.
If you said 18.
Oh, Joe.
Man.
Come on.
Go.
Yes.
Joe. Come on.
Oh,
Can you
yes.
not publish that bit? Can you edit that bit out, please, Richard?
Get rid of that, right,
That bit's
Richard?
staying.
That stays. Because basically, it shows you not being able to do math and then getting tricked by what is as common as, look, your shoelace is untied.
Well, the thing that was amazing is Joe was so fearful at the fact I posed a maths question.
That's
that
right.
the fear consumed her, so she couldn't even answer 79
Yeah.
plus 1. She was like, oh gosh, maths. Oh,
It
78.
was literally the fear of it.
Is that a trick you learned from Donald Trump?
Oh, I'm telling you, man. Yeah, he taught it on one of his tweet classes. But yeah, I think that.
Can I just quickly point out something? While we were sorting out the computer, Fru and went and got us some water, and she came back with ice water that's got mint in it. It's
Are you
too
sure?
posh for Fire Mountain.
It might.
Amazing.
It might be nettles, Richard.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe's has got
Poisonous
mint.
Thing is, this is from Fru's garden, and Ramsey was here earlier, and I saw him wean on that section of the plant. So good luck with that, Richard.
Oh, it tastes a bit lemony. A little ammonia-y.
Excellent.
So, summer camp, how we arranged summer camp was with villagers to help support the people who were camping.
Oh, this is good, guys. Listen
Okay.
to this. This is interesting.
And so to differentiate the villagers, we created banners, and these banners were different colors, and then we were going to call the villagers after the colors of the banners.
Yes.
And so we put together the brochure to send out, And I rang Dom and I said, okay, this is the villages, these are the colors of the villages, and this is what the email is going to be. And so we had 4 colors. We had the orange village, the blue village, the white village, and the black village. Okay. At which point, it felt like we couldn't have a white village and a black village. It didn't feel quite right.
Yes.
So
For who?
For me, mostly.
So mostly for Dom going, I don't know
Why?
if that's appropriate. At the same time, I was listening to a podcast, and in it, the lady on the podcast who was getting interviewed started by apologizing for the fact that she was white. And she was going, I've grown up from a position of privilege as a white person, middle class. So everything I'm going to say comes from that vantage point, and I want to apologize for that. And this led me into wanting to talk as Christians about the issue of white privilege.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Which is why we've invited me and
black-
Johanna
Yeah.
onto this platform
We
today.
said to ourselves, who is the whitest person we can think of? And Jake Parker was busy, so we got Dom.
I think you have to gauge who the white person is. If you put on a beat and see them dancing, then you can find the whitest person in a room, can't you,
It's true.
typically?
It's
But can
true.
I say, I think I was the biggest resistance to the white and black village. Because you said, Fu, just a minute ago, you were like, why did you feel like you couldn't say that, right? You can't play that. I just think it's an unhelpful terminology, especially coming from a South African.
Because of the weight that it already carries.
Well,
the idea of
because
black
in
and
South
white.
Africa, with apartheid and history of all this segregation and separation, right?
Okay,
If
yeah.
Richard is dividing up the villages and he's made a black village
I see.
and a
okay.
white village, I just
saw
thought,
the colours.
So Richard, what you couldn't come up with a red village or a
Well, we
Green Village.
already had the banners printed up. It was too late by that
right.
point, Joe.
And the Sunny Hill colours are orange and blue.
Right.
yeah, in
and
the
then
branding
you've got
plaque.
black.
Yeah, exactly. So we stuck on brand.
okay, fine. All right.
But obviously, when we chose the brand colours, that was pre-George Floyd. So we don't know. We didn't know what was coming. So so I felt uneasy. I just thought it's an unhelpful stumbling block. So let's number them
So
instead.
it was the fact that it was a village,
Yeah.
not the
Yeah.
fact that it was a colour.
No, it's not the colour. It was the
Yes,
village. Like, for
okay,
example, you can have a
okay.
black dress and a white dress, but the fact that the insinuation and the suggestion of black, I just think when people hear that,
Yeah.
they're either going to feel dreadfully awkward or find it absolutely hilarious.
Okay.
And it's just an unnecessary stumbling block.
So-
Let's get rid of it.
So if I said, sitting next to you is Johanna,
Yeah.
she's a black woman, do you
Yeah.
find that awkward?
Well, I'd first want to say, do you define yourself as a woman? No, I'm joking. You never know anymore. You can't make those leaps of assumption.
So open up that can of worms.
No, I would say she's a black woman.
Okay.
But when I say that, I'd be hoping that Joey's okay with me saying that,
Okay.
because I think part of the problem is more and more words become outlawed, and you don't know what is any longer socially acceptable to say. So it's okay to say white. Well, I assume so. But it's even it's not just the black and white thing. It's like you can't say disabled toilets anymore. You have to say accessible toilets. Because disabled implies that the problem's with them and not the environment they're going into, right? And it all feels, in my mind, like a splitting hairs scenario. But obviously, I don't know. What are
It's
your
what people are comfortable with as well, isn't
Yeah.
it? And when I say comfortable, I'm not talking about this kind of idolatry of my comfort is king. But I remember when we first moved to Ferndale, which is a really dominantly white area, and we'd moved from Bromley, which is probably a 60-40 split, and certainly the environments that we were in at church and at school, it was probably more 60-40, 60% black, 40% white. And we were very used to saying black, white. It was just, it wasn't a value judgment. It carried no extra temperature to it. And I remember talking to someone. We invited some people for lunch, and I said, oh, what was the name of the black woman I was talking to? And they literally put their head down and were completely silent, just looked at their plate and felt really uncomfortable with the fact that I had drawn attention to who it was that I wanted the name from based on their skin colour.
Wow.
Yeah, we don't have the issue with what was the Asian lady I was talking to?
I think it's when you said, the black disabled one. The black disabled one I saw. You know what's really funny on that, though, that you say? My in-laws in Torquay, they've got grandkids there, and I remember them telling me a story about when one of their grandsons came out of school and was telling a story about one of their friends, right? And their friend come out and he say, no, that one over there with the blue bag, no, with green coat, and then Chris is like, oh, the black boy, and Ethan was like, yeah, that one. And it's funny because what he pulled out as an infant, the last thing that he determined to explain who he was talking about was the colour of the skin, but rather what they were wearing. So, and I know even this now becomes a offensive thing to say, oh, I don't see colour and all that. But what was interesting from a child's perspective is that it's a non-issue. It's just like. Yeah.
So Joe, what would your experience be of this? Because I know before Fire Mountain, I dropped a little nugget in for you, where I said I don't think white privilege is a real thing. I don't believe it exists.
Look at Fru's face.
And all of a sudden we were like, we should do a Fire Mountain on this.
And what we should say is Richard's views are not representative of Sunny Hill's views. No. Why does Sunny Hill?
It's exactly your view. What are you talking about? Well, you were saying it even hard. No, I was joking.
Well, so let's get into
it. Obviously, Joe, I'm really interested to hear your viewpoint on this.
I do think white privilege exists.
You're wrong. Okay, thanks for coming to Fire Mountain.
Come on, Joe.
That's according to your opinion, Richard. But only because I think, as a black person, okay, as a white person, I'm not sure, but I don't believe that you probably wake up thinking you're white, because you're not, because you don't do that. But as a black person living in America or London, you do wake up and you think, well, I'm a black person, so what? And I know we probably mustn't focus on those things, but you think, right, what is going to happen to me today? There are real people that go on the streets and are facing constant discrimination, they're getting stopped by the police. It's a real thing, and I'm not saying white people don't, but because I think because there's less black people, it feels like it's all the time for black people. And I think, yeah, you just don't know what you're going to get. And I know it sounds really, really silly, but it's a real
It doesn't
thing.
sound silly. You shouldn't defend yourself. You shouldn't defend it.
No, you don't sound silly.
And I don't get offended if you say Joe's a black person, because I am a black woman. That's true. I don't get offended by that, because actually if I'm describing you, and I think as a black person, maybe because people don't say that white woman, that's probably the difference. But people say that black person, because I hear that a lot, but for me personally, it doesn't offend me.
But if you were in, or if we were in a more predominantly environment where there's black people, let's say in a church setting, for example, like some of our apostolic churches, that would be more black. You would say the white person if they're more identifiable in the crowd.
Maybe,
Does that make sense? So it's not that you are discriminating because of their skin colour, but it's obviously something that is less of an occurrence. So it's an easier, more to define or determine somebody.
And I think moving to Burndown, like Fru said, when I did move here, I thought, oh, spot the black person. That's literally what it is.
Really?
It's so weird.
It is.
There's only white people
and
here.
There's people that don't look like me, and you do think like, oh, okay. It's interesting.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Do you think that necessitates this idea that white people then have been more privileged than, let's say, your experience as a black person has been? Or is it that actually socioeconomic drives those things? So if I lived in a poor London neighborhood and I dressed like I lived in a poor London neighborhood, I'm way more likely to get pulled over by the police, whether I'm black or white, than if I lived in a middle class London neighborhood and dressed like I was in a middle class London neighborhood. So is it like, do you think it's more driven by socioeconomic, or do you think from your own experience that it is way more skin color orientated than that?
I think it's a bit of both, actually. I think that on one hand it is, but my brother, I mean, we live in Southampton. We don't dress like, well, what you just said, but he's been pulled over before, and he is a decent black man. You know, okay. Oh gosh, yeah, because he probably does have tattoos, so that's another thing that doesn't help. But he's covered. But I don't think that should be a thing, just because you.
I think the hard thing is with your question, Richard, when you talk about socioeconomic conditions, is that again it's the chicken and egg scenario, in the sense that I think part of the problem with policing in the Met in London is actually, if you look at the data, more gang crime is committed by black young men than white young men. So police, even though they're probably told not to, generally might do more profiling on the street because they're looking at somebody who fits that mould that is more likely to be carrying a weapon or something. Now, the hardship with that, where we talk about socioeconomic kind of the impression of that on young people, is the fact is that are black young men more likely to join a gang because of the lack of privilege they have in society? Does that make sense? So the profiling still comes from white privilege. I guess that would be the argument, rather than because this policeman's racist and actually he's just targeting black people, but rather in their experience this is where a lot.
So I probably feel like, sorry for not to jump over you, but then obviously jump in.
Yeah, jumping over me. Yeah.
I probably feel like people who have grown up in that kind of demographic are more likely to join a gang. Like, I don't see that as a black or white issue. It becomes a problem though when I find like white people feel a guilt for being white and apologize for it, as if like I can't help the fact that I was born white as much as Joe can't help the fact that she's born black. It's just who I am. I'm not too sure why I need to kind of walk around going, really sorry that I was born white. I've had all this privilege handed to me. Actually, I don't think I have had all this privilege handed to me at all.
But I think, is that mostly because I, as a black person, I don't know why you have to apologise to me. I actually think, I find that more offensive. Like, why do you need to apologise to me? No, do you know, because I don't know if black people actually care. No, it's true.
Like, I think it's like a white issue, like a white guilt issue.
Because I don't understand why you have to apologise for what? For being white?
I don't know that it's apologising for being white. I mean, we've talked about what is really racism and discrimination. It's negative stereotyping.
That's right.
And I think when the whole Black Lives Matter thing came up and we started to be more aware, and as a white person, I started to be more aware of the things I wasn't aware of. So, and that's what I guess I mean.
Could you unpack
maybe
that?
I've got that.
When you
will
say
do.
things I wasn't aware of, I'm interested to know what things
so
were.
if you think about what Jo just said, is she wakes up and she looks in the mirror, or she's just getting ready and whatever, and she thinks, I'm a black person, what am I going to face today because of the colour of my skin? I have not been aware that I have not had to think that thought, and that's the privilege of being white. Is I've never had to have that sense of anticipation or dread even for that, and I wasn't aware of that. And I think for me, and maybe I misunderstand. I have got an inkling that I don't quite understand what the term white privilege quite means. But for me, if I can define it for how I see it, it's this idea that there are things that I take for granted that are just not there for a black person, or there are things that are there for a black person that I'm just not at all aware of. And to not have that kind of insight, to not even have an understanding of how that affects how I interact with the world, and the privilege that I have in interacting with the world as a white person is white privilege. That's how I see it. And so there is an element of saying, I'm sorry, I don't understand what your experience is. And I have to understand there are things that I might not be aware of. So in anticipation of my possibly speaking in an ignorant and uninformed way, it's a new word for us, in an arrogant way.
You can invent words because you're white. That's fine.
Because
white people can make up all the words they want for it.
Oh man.
Wow. That's the apology that I would want to make if I was having a kind of a meaningful conversation about issues where I was aware I don't understand the full scale of this. Because I haven't experienced it.
But I guess it's like a man not like thinking as a woman. It's the same, that could be the same thing, right? So I think, where do you draw the line?
But in the same way as I wouldn't carry thinking as a man I've had privilege. I don't think that.
But the argument,
I'm pushing all of the buttons right now.
The argument would be to that though, Richard, is you're not going to see it because now I'm not saying I'm against what you're saying.
Yeah, no.
But I think the idea is you would never see it if you had.
Yeah.
Because it's been your lived experience.
Yeah, I think that's. I do think that is valid, and I think that everything that's been said is valid. I suppose coming from South Africa, I do know what it is like to wake up and think about the color of your skin. So I know exactly the experience you're talking about on the other side. And I don't feel like, though, that even when I left South Africa, I didn't feel, and just for clarity, I didn't leave South Africa because I'm a racist and hated the country. Just for real clarity over this, because this conversation could be going anyway in your head. It's, but when I left, I didn't walk away going, wow, I think black people are more privileged than me in South Africa. I just didn't think that. I didn't feel like that there was privilege on either side. What I felt like was that there was skill, there was hard work, there was everything else that should go into being able to get a job, deliver well, do what you need to do.
Yeah.
And that if the effort and energy was prepared in, as much as another person would feel like outraged if a person that was of better skill level, of worse skill level, got a job that they didn't, I would agree with that. Yeah. I feel like I struggle because I feel like the more podcasts I listen to, the more kind of, and I do feel like it's a white woke thing pushes out, is it becomes harder to be white, and that sounded super racist, so I don't know how to back that up. It becomes harder just to go, this is who I am. And actually I'm quite comfortable with that, and I don't need to apologize for that, and not at the detriment, down-putting, or racial type presenting that's associated with it if I'm talking to somebody who's black.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how that moves. I don't know if that makes sense, what I'm trying to say, without sounding like a racist.
Well, one of the interesting things is we've got a black family. We've got a few at Sunny Hill, but a black family in particular I'm thinking of. I was talking with them after the service, and they said that the whole George Floyd incident and everything that spun off of that became actually really unhelpful to their family and to their lives in the work they were doing, because the type of work they do is quite integrated into community. It's basically in the forces in some way. And the expression is it's like, before this we felt like we could exist and almost be hidden within a community, but now he said it's so awkward because no one knows how to talk to you know what I mean, like and I think that's one of the downsides, like in the pursuit of social justice, which as Christians we all want. Actually, it's the term is intersectionality, where victim points, where you stack a person with a whole heap of points. So if they're black, then they've started here. If they're black and disabled, they've started there. If they're female, black and disabled, they've started down here. So therefore you have to go out your way to really elevate their plight, which in one sense it makes sense logically, but societally it makes no sense at all, because in order to elevate someone you have to pull someone down, which means equality never happens. And I think your experience is South Africa, which is one of the worst countries for that. So it was racially charged towards black people for generations, and then their solution was, well, let's swing it the other way. Now let's push down the white people, pull up the black people, and what you end up with is a very confused and chaotic society with no stability whatsoever, because equality, I think Nelson Mandela was obviously an amazing man, and obviously I think he had probably the purest vision of equality of anyone who's ever governed South Africa, but obviously Zuma comes in and obviously has a very corrupt view. I mean, even outside of the colour of your skin, just a corrupt politician basically. But ultimately I think that as Christians, this is why I sit uncomfortable with the Black Lives Matter initiative, is because of course I would champion Black Lives Matter, of course they do, and like white lives matter and Asian lives matter, like all lives matter. But the problem is it becomes so politically charged that you can't separate the actual need and the goal of equality from this kind of virtue signalling campaign that you've got to take the knee at the beginning of a football game, otherwise you're a racist. You've got to do X, Y, Z, otherwise you're a racist. It's just not true. It's so annoying.
Which is partly why I wanted to throw out the conversation, because I don't think enough churches talk about this issue. It's like one of the big hot button issues, because the minute I say I'm white and I don't want to apologize for that, the only way that people interpret that is you gotta be a racist. And it's not. It's actually, I'd go, no, I value everybody, and I would go and fight for the rights of anybody. Like, I don't value the color of my skin more than the color of someone else's skin, but I can't be apologetic for the color of my skin.
And isn't that just the situation where we don't feel that we can focus in on the issues of inequality, and instead we just have to take it, you're a woman, therefore you're being treated poorly in all areas, and you're a man, therefore you're being treated well in all areas. As a mother of young men, I see my young men being, for example, feared for being young men. How do you get to be an older man without passing through being a younger man? There are so many issues that affect different groupings because of the assumptions that are made, but we don't seem to have the ability anymore, and we're intent to focus in on what is the discrimination issue that is facing this group. So access to education is massive. But if you take particularly British Indian families, access to education is often far superior to your average white working class boy, much superior.
Yeah.
So there are different issues that affect different groups, and all need to be unpicked. But I think perhaps referring back to your issues that you talked about with government, that we tend to just blob group the issues rather than drill down
Deal with it,
to address inequality and social justice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any thoughts, Joe?
So what you were saying earlier about the family in a church, I agree with. I think what we've become is victims.
Yeah.
And that's like the worst thing, I think, for me anyway, as a black person. I don't want to be a victim. I'm not a victim, and I shouldn't have to be a victim just because of the colour of my skin.
Yeah.
If I'm, I just think that it's very unhelpful.
Yeah.
It's really unhelpful, and I think people just don't know how to address things anymore.
Yes.
Without feeling a certain type of way.
Yeah, you're right.
And actually, that's
really true.
And I think even in the church, how do we address it? Because I want you to come to me and be able to tell me.
Yeah.
Don't be scared because I'm black, or you think being black equals aggression or vice. I hate those words associated. I hate it because that's a stereotype.
Yeah.
It really upsets me when people use those words for me, because I think, well, hang on, I'm just passionate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. That's your personality.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not.
And I think that is, I totally agree with you, Joe, because I think that's part of the massive struggle in this whole conversation. What it's really robbed us of is the ability to talk as human beings. It means we end up not being able to talk, just in case I say something that you may look and go, that's not quite right, or oop, that offends you. And rather than actually being able to talk through it, we end up sitting on it. And it's in South Africa after 1994, and when Nelson Mandela came into power, they instituted the Reconciliation Commission, which was by Desmond Tutu. It was genius. And I went and sat in some of those sessions because it was open to the public and you could. And what was really fascinating about it, it was the most non-politically correct thing you could ever have sat in. But listening to people speak about their experiences being white in South Africa, being black in South Africa, during apartheid, and what it was like and what it resulted in, brought people together who were opposed. And what did it was honest, frank conversation that wasn't trying to fit into a politically correct or any kind of real structure, just going, this is our story, it's who we are, we can't get away from it. Now how do we begin to move forward? And I think that's what's got lost. I was thinking about the George Floyd thing the other day and going, it's not Black Lives Matter, inner city lives matter. There is so much issues facing people who live in inner cities, situations. It's not just a color thing, it's in everyday life. I could get killed by my neighbor, by a gang member on the street, by somebody who's robbing a store. Like, it stole the issue. Like, I feel like it stole the conversation away from what it should have been, which is we could all get shot in a drive-by, or we could all get shot by police having a shootout in our street that potentially would never happen in a suburb, but does happen in the inner city. And I feel like it gets robbed.
The problem, what you're saying is, though, Richard, I would say the main propagators of this problem and miscommunication is the media. It's the news. And what you're talking about doesn't sell.
I pay my license.
Oh, BBC, mate. Don't even
Not
talk.
above, it's
the
above
Biden
it.
Broadcasting
It's
Company over here. I think it sensationalizes things. So, for example, if you look at the data in 2020, I think that was the year George Floyd thing, more white people were killed in cold blood by police, right? In terms of non-reactive confrontation.
Proportionally or numerically?
Numerically, right, and actually proportionally as well. Actually, I've heard an argument of that by Candace Owens as well, who's a black woman who kind of, I guess, would speak up for the right party, by right, not the right, not wrong, right, as in right-leaning party in America.
Trump, basically Trump.
But I think that Trump basically. Trump. I think this is the problem: is that the media needs things that polarize people and move people. They like herding people into groups, polarizing, because actually it funds a lot of their marketing and actually gets people checking the app. And I think this is part of the problem. As long as media is unregulated and not held to account and not impartial, then all we will constantly see is a disproportionate response to any problem we face, whether it be to do with the colour of our skin, the transgender kind of conversation, abortion, all of these things, media needs to cause division. It's so divisive, and again, media obviously lines the pockets of very rich elite people, right? Because it's unregulated, and so the one company that you would think wouldn't be is BBC, but actually they're one of the worst propagators of that. So I think that, like, you're right, but it can never happen as long as media keep making the narrative, because politicians become too scared to really speak out. So Brian Johnson, what's his name, Boris Johnson, gets up and says about transgenders, people competing in athletes, competing in athletics and sports and all that, and just said basically we need to find a way forward, but it's not going to be men who identify as women playing in women's sports, because it just ruins women's sports basically for women, right? Then the news almost like outlaw him as some kind of fascist kind of, it makes it impossible for a politician to stay popular and articulate relatively standard and generally populist views and ideas, because the media, it doesn't fit the narrative that the media want to churn out. So I guess I don't really have a solution, but I think that the problem is, I guess what I'm trying to say is we're never going to deal with the problems like you're saying about inner city challenges, because it's better for the media to drive us into.
So Joe, just
factions.
piggybacking off what Dom's saying, do you feel like some of the stereotype you have to deal with, like you were talking about, you were going, there's all these stereotypes, isn't actually something propagated on the ground, but something that's been fed by media that then we've all assumed as being the truth, because because media has ongoingly kind of created this scenario? Like, do you feel like what the root is of those stereotypes, or do you think that there is like a deep? I do believe that there is a deep-seated problem of racism across the world. Like, I don't think that doesn't exist. I'm not ignorant at all in that way, but I'm wondering how much of what you're finding living in Britain, like, do you think is driven by what Dom is saying in terms of the media driving that side of the conversation, or is it actually just lived experiences? Is just what I've experienced?
I think it's a bit of both, because I think when you watch telly, you have representations of people, don't you? So people present things in a certain way. So if they're using the black person as I'm going to use female as the aggressive, feisty, hateration, all these negative connotations for a black woman, always cranking her neck and all of this stuff. Do you know what I mean? The media, that's what you were, the characters. But now
Sharpay.
Exactly.
Sharpay?
What were you doing? I have no idea. I just thought I like that. Sorry, I didn't mean to throw you off track, because I think you're on something there. I think you're right.
So I think every culture has their representatives, don't they? That we represent people in a different way.
My culture is represented by Magic Mike.
Wow. Okay.
He's in Harry Potter. He's the little wizardy thing.
No, he's not.
I know.
Just checking that you know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
You shouldn't know what I'm talking about. That's wrong, Joe.
Well, I've never seen it. Don't want to. Anyway, Joe, carry on. You're on a good line of inquiry here.
Free just said the Wiggles.
Are they Australian or something?
They're Australian, but it's definitely not
sounds
them.
the same to me.
Magic, you know Magic.
No, let's not talk about it.
Okay, let's
Joe, back to you.
Okay. So yeah, I think the media has a lot to answer for in that sense, but I also think it's lived experience. But actually, when you think about it, the media probably feeds into a lot of what we are manipulated
so
we
easily.
Are thought to think this is what people are like without actually getting to know them. So social media is a lot. I find social media a lot to blame as well, because we represent things in a way that is not true as well. So I think.
So can we do a quick run around?
Well, can I, before you do?
Okay, cool.
I need to just clarify something. I'm not saying media create the racism problem.
No.
Racism is a real thing. I do think it's a real thing. All I'm saying is that it's not just aimed at black. They're not saying that. I think the media have no interest in resolving the race issue. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's better for them to keep perpetuating. That it's better for them.
Yeah.
So I think all I'm saying is they take a problem and magnify it and then keep it cyclical, because it sells. They don't want a solution. They just want problems. Yeah. And in the absence of a war, which is now what we're getting, it's kind of like a win for them.
Yeah, and I didn't think. I think the problem when we say racism is all we ever think about. It's a black-white issue, and it's not actually. growing up in South Africa during apartheid, it wasn't just a black-white issue. It was a black Indian issue. It was a white Indian issue. It was a English-speaking white, Afrikaans-speaking
class as
white
well, wasn't it? Class
issue.
Yeah.
It's
a class.
racism is a much broader and bigger issue than any single color to color, and I think that that's what we've reduced it down to. Again, I think the conversation gets lost because we can't actually talk about it in a proper way, which is problematic. But I wanted to do a run around, and also we'll include Dom's mom because she's sitting off screen and she's a little bit wiser, maybe a little bit older. She's shaking her head now and looking
she's
like
not older.
there.
She's not.
She's not older.
Just wiser.
That's oldest.
She's questioning the wise a bit.
The wiser.
The wise
So
bird.
so I'm going to run around, and then Barbara, off camera, just shake your head or put a thumbs up or a down. Do you think? And obviously, Joe,
Start
you
with
know
me.
the answer,
Start
but
with
I'll
me.
with Dom. Do you feel like you've been privileged as a white person?
Oh, start with someone else. I guess yes. Can I add caveats, or do you just want me to say yes
Just
or no?
yes or no, and then we'll swing
Yes.
back around. Fru?
Yes.
I'm going for a no. Barbara, yes or no?
Different age to what I was brought up in. Difficult.
So you're saying no? She's saying different age to what she was brought up in. She finds it difficult to answer it, but do you feel like you're privileged or not by growing up as a no? So basically, I'm identifying with the much older group here.
Yeah, yeah. There we go.
So you wanted to give your reason, Dom? Go for it.
Are you not going to ask Joe, or you just?
Joe, do you feel like growing up as a white person?
We can't talk about white privilege and then not ask the only black person on the broadcast what their opinion is, Richard.
Do you feel like as a white person who's grown up in Britain that you were privileged for being white? Is that
Yeah,
an
that's-
experience you've had?
No.
Well, I guess it's more the
But
question.
you do
of-
think that white privilege is a real thing, though?
It is a real thing,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, is it right? Is it right thing or is it a wrong thing? That's my next question. But yeah.
Yeah, so my caveat would be privilege, but probably not to the extent that people would like to suggest. So I think that it's so deeply rooted that it would be undeniable to say that typically, historically, Britain has been a white-centric nation, right? That's just undeniable, right? And I'm not saying that was good. That's just the reality. So to not think that through the generations there has been this sense of entitlement that's been bred across generations, I think in many ways millennial generation and younger, I think I'll become more aware of those things than the other generations, probably because of social media and probably because we're more connected to the world than previous generations. So we can see what's happening in America and go, flipping heck, it's crazy. But I think what I wouldn't want to sign up to is this idea of, oh yeah, no, all white people have only got there because they're white, because that's a load of crock too. But I think ultimately it would be really remiss to say that, for example, I didn't have some significant. Now this is going to sound really bad potentially. Only because it runs the risk of making what Joe's talking about, waking up black, and it's not meant to. But
fine.
work with it, okay?
Yeah.
To sleep.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. You're gonna sleep white, yeah. Wait a minute, what's going on here? Although by the time Fire Mountain finishes, I'm expecting to be far less white because it's so hot in this garden.
What I'm looking forward to is by the end of this episode, the South African will be the one who's seen as the least racist.
Yeah. So obviously, until recently, I had a moustache, right?
Yes. You're going to talk about being
moustache.
moustacheist, aren't you?
Right. So, like in that scenario, for example, every day I woke up aware of my moustache. I'm not lying. I mean that, because I was mindful that no one my age does this, and no one in church really likes this. And so constantly going to the shops, I'm always thinking, people are going to think I'm an absolute idiot having a moustache, right? Now, that didn't put me off having it, but every day, literally, I woke up aware of something, right, that I never normally have that awareness of anything, because this is just me to not have a moustache, right? Now, I only say that, obviously, not to put that into the realm of racism, right, just to clarify, but all to say that what Joe's expressing about waking up and being aware of something would really have huge significance, in the sense of, well, surely there is white privilege then, because I never wake up feeling white. I wake up just Dom. I don't wake up aware of the colour of my skin. And if Joe does, that's surely quite indicative that there is some measure of differentiation that Joe experiences that I never do. and obviously my moustache is quite different, but I did have that awareness when I had something that was different to lots of people, and probably more in this area you wake up in Dorset, because I guess it's largely white, isn't it? I think it's like 98% or something. It's pretty crazy as far as British boroughs go. But I think I guess my caveat to my thing about white privilege is just like, I don't think it's to the extent that the media try to like inflame, but certainly I think it is there, but not to the extent that most people would suggest. I think.
Sorry, Richard. I also think because, like Barbara said, it's a generational thing as well, actually. Because I think what you were saying, that the younger, this generation,
millennial plus,
the millennial plus now are aware that there's actually different cultures and different people in the world. It's not just, and like you said, it's not just a black and white thing. There are Asians, there are Indians, there are so many other cultures. So I think that's a good thing, personally, because I feel like for me, can't we just all live in harmony?
Yeah.
Is that even?
That's the win, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Out of interest, do we need to land this now?
How big is your question?
I just want to ask what her experience of Sunny Hill has been, because obviously it's
been great.
It's been a lot. It's a largely white church, isn't it? And I think
we're Afro-Caribbean.
Well, I think like over the last 3 or 4, just before COVID, it was really great but for years there was only really Equa who represented a different skin colour to anyone else in the church, and I'd be really intrigued to know what your experience of that is, because my perception would be that I don't see you as Joe, the black woman, so I see you as Anthony and Joe.
Yeah.
So you're feisty. I mean, my wife's feisty and she's white. Do you know what I mean?
No, Anthony calls me feisty all the time.
It's personality.
Do you think it's better that
I like the fire.
You see the French in Anthony more than you see the black in Joe?
That's probably true. That's probably true. I probably do, to be honest.
I know.
Because I mean, it's funny because we were on the phone yesterday because we were having dinner with you guys tonight, and I shouted down the phone, "No frog legs for dinner," right? Right, which is
Anthony loves that stereotyping. Just loves it.
Well, it's funny because
we're laughing now.
I bet he is.
While he tosses.
What was funny is that
legs.
It's a British privilege.
This is white privilege, right? English
Mr.
privilege.
British privilege.
Do you know what it is? I think we grew up in Southampton, but Southampton is actually multicultural.
Yeah. It's far more.
I went to Kington Unity Church, and it's middle class white.
Yeah.
But there are loads of cultures there as well.
Yeah.
So I think coming to Sunny Hill, and obviously marrying Anthony, who was white French.
Yes. Yeah.
That obviously didn't. I feel at home. I don't feel that
that's great.
There is.
It's great.
Anyone that is being awkward to me just because I'm black.
Well, that's the thing is, I think the win for church and kingdom is that you don't come feeling different, but that you feel one. We feel family.
Yeah.
So I want to end on this Bible verse, because I know that it's a hard thing to frame into the Bible. But I remember reading this. I must have been about 13 years old in South Africa. So up until this stage, it was illegal for any black kids to come to our school. So I remember reading this Bible verse and I didn't know what to do with it. And it stuck with me ever since that day, which is in 1 John 4:20. It says this: "Whoever claims to love God, yet hates a brother or sister, is a liar. For who does not love their brother and sister, whom they have seen, cannot love God, whom they have not seen." I think it's such a scary verse, because basically it's saying if you cannot love the people around you, irrespective of the color of their skin, irrespective of how they are, and you can see them, it is actually impossible for you then to turn around and say I love God, because you cannot see him. And I think on this whole thing, no matter where you land on white privilege, and I do think it's a conversation that should continue, because I feel like it's one of the hot button issues that no one talks about in church, but it's everybody's talking about it, or alluding to it, or apologizing for it, or not apologizing for it, or being uptight about it, or hating people because of it. We have to be people who look and go, we first and foremost love the people around us who we can see, because this is how we know we love God, who we can't see. And so I thought it'd be a good place to kind of end on there. I don't think that there is any space for racism within society, and I'm not talking about black and white, I'm talking about
or prejudice.
Prejudice. Anything against, like, we have to be people as church and as Christians who go, I see you and I love you, and this is also how I know I love God, who I don't see.
Great.
Any final thoughts anybody wants to throw in at this point?
I think I would want to say that what you were just saying is we don't talk about this stuff enough. Now the problem is when you don't have dialogue and conversation, you drive further into your silo, which means that if you are looking at a certain flavour of thinking on social media or following a certain flavour of news, then if you cut off any channel that could speak something contrary to what you think, you become more entrenched and more ingrained into the well that you feed from. And I think social media works that way. It looks at what you're looking at and it offers you more because it wants your attention for more hours of the day. And I think one of the biggest threats of cancel culture and silencing conversations is that, again, it perpetuates this idea of driving people more into their corners. And I think that's why at Fire Mountain, not just this issue, but anything we talk about, really, what we're trying to do is bring into the light and into the thinking of Christians that call Sunny Hill home and other people who drop by, bring into the light all of those conversations and thoughts, and be willing for ourselves to look foolish and ignorant in the hope that at least it exposes something that's worthy of consideration and reflection.
When you say foolish and ignorant, and I see it can come across that way, but surely as well there's a nobility in just being curious, being willing to ask a question with that sense that I honestly don't know this answer, and putting yourself in that deferential position to speak to someone who is of a type that you're not.
Yes.
To ask the questions.
Yes.
And you are risking causing offence because we know that people see their life through filters. They'll hear your questions through filters.
Yeah, definitely.
Being aware of that, but actually being brave, because to know is to love, isn't
yes,
it?
that's
and
right.
We can't know,
yes.
and therefore we can't love unless we are curious.
Yeah, that's right.
I think we need to be fascinated by diversity, interested and honouring and valuing.
It's great. That's a great thought.
And also, can I just say one more thing? Going on your Bible scripture, that I'm just reminded of the body of Christ. You know, there's different types of people in the body, and actually we can't function without
each
all
other.
The different types of people. Exactly. So, race, whatever. I think at the end of the day, God made us all.
Yeah.
God made us all in His image. So He wanted to make black people. He wanted to make white, Asian, and we just love each other.
Yeah, definitely.
Keep it moving.
And yay, the South Americans as well.
South Americans, come on.
Oh, that's taken a turn, South Americans.
Yeah. We've got some South Americans in Ferndown, haven't we?
We do.
Wonderful.
Yay!
We love the South Americans until it's a World Cup. Then we despise the South Americans. They're far too good at that thing called football.
We're going to be ending it there. We hope you enjoyed this edition of Fire Mountain. Join us next week for a special summer camp from camp.
It's going to be so good.
Of Fire Mountain. Keep talking, keep thinking, keep looking into your Bible. And if you have any disagreements with anything that Dom or Joe have said, please email firemountain@sunnyhill.church. Other than that, we look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.